we're going to use a tree diagram to solve some counting questions. And tree diagrams are a great way to work with probability or counting questions. The only thing is sometimes they become very, very complex. But in this case, it'll help us for this question. How many ways can a student answer a true or false, so they only have two options, quiz of 10 questions? Okay? Well, the kid has the options to answer true or false. And then technically, depending on what they're looking for, there is a third option. What could the third option be? Do you happen to know? Think of it like this. These two consist of answering. What would the other option be?
Not answering.
Not answering. Not answering. Okay, so it's debatable, and I'm not sure where your book's going with this, whether this is two options per leaf of the tree, you could say, or per branch, or it's three options. So what we'll do is we'll kind of solve using both and see what the differences are. Okay, so in the first one, we'll solve where they really only have the option to answer true, or you have the option to answer false. Like, really, why would you not answer, right, if it's 50-50 chance of getting it? Well, what that is, if this is the first question, you have two answers, two routes, or two you can take. Then from there, after you've answered, let's say, true on the first one, you have the option on the second question to answer true or false. Or if you answered false, you have the option to answer true or false. So already, we're up to 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways if there was only 2 questions on this test. But this actually goes all the way to what? How many questions are there in total? 10. So there are 10 questions. Now, the way we would actually solve a question like this is we would take this 2, because there's 2 options every time, and we're going to multiply it by the next leaf. And you have 2 options every time you go through this. So when we get to the third question, we again are multiplying by a factor of 2. So really the way we want to do this is we figure out how many branches you could say are going to be in the tree. And that is essentially how many questions are on this test. And what we do is we say that you have your base is 2, because we're always multiplying that number 2. We turn it into an exponent question. And our base is 2. We answer 2 every time. And how many questions are there? Well, there's 10 sets of questions. So we're looking at 2 to the power of 10 in this question for the amount of options we have to answer this quiz. So 2 to the power of 10, 1,024 is one way we could answer this. Okay, that many different ways of answering it. Now, if it was the other option where there was technically 3 ways, the student has the choice to answer true, false, or, we're going to say NA, not applicable. In this case, the student has 3 choices every branch. There's again still going to be 10 questions, so this is the first question, this is the second question, all the way up to question 10. And it's still going to be the same process. The student can choose to answer true, false, or not answer the question at all. And they can do that every single time. So for instance, let's say there was only 2 questions on this test. Well, from true, he could also take the route to true again, true then false, or true and not answer. He can answer false first, then true, maybe 2 falses, or a false and a not answer. Or the student can answer nothing on the first one, true on the second, false on the second, or not answer both questions, which is usually not the case. But in this case, again, we're multiplying by a factor of 3. So because there's 3 branches or 3 choices on every branch, our base in this question becomes 3. And if it's possible for the student to never answer any of the questions, that being included, then you have base 3 to the power of 10. In which case we have many more options for how many ways you could answer this test, in which case you have 3 to the power of 10, 59,049 ways. 59,049 ways that this test could be answered. That's how many different routes they can take. And what we mean by routes is essentially, this is a route in itself, true, true. That's considered one route. Or you could go true, false. Or you could go false, true. Even though you've still done 1 true and 1 false, you've taken a different route. You chose a true, false, and then a false second. So the order actually mattered in that case. So that's how you would kind of solve something like that with a tree diagram, just trying to make sense of it. on how many really options you have every time you go down a question.